Hopefully, I'm actually in the frame. I should be, and you should be.
Well, top of your head's getting cut off.
Oh, is it? Oh, that makes it lower. There we go. How's that?
That's good.
Okay. Hello. Welcome to the castle. That's not even bad. It's a red Scotch. Is it a miscalled Harry Jones? Okay. They ran into me or something. Okay. Thank you. Welcome to the Castle Falkenstein seminar entitled What's Coming Up for Castle Falkenstein. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what it is, where it's going, what's going on. There will be some time for talking, and we will have some great conversations, the four of us, five of us who might get here. It'll be a lot of fun. And you know what? It's good. I would rather have two dedicated fans in a room with people who are not particularly interested.
I actually knew, but I am interested.
Well, congratulations. We'll tell you all about it. My name is Jay Gray. I have multiple hats. The two hats that concern this seminar is I am our Talsorian's media ambassador, which is fancy talk where I'm the guy that handles all the social networking accounts and talks to all the blogs and podcasts and such. In addition to that, I do development for a work called Fat Goblin Games. Fat Goblin Games currently holds a license for making new Castle Falkenstein products. And I am the person that does most of that. This is Lisa Ponte.
It is indeed. And a quick description of what Falkenstein is?
Yes. Lisa Ponte is the business manager of our Talsorian Games. She is also a writer of some skill, which she does not like me to bring up, but in Castle Falkenstein parlance, she worked, I believe, the most writing-wise on Memoirs of Oberon and Fairy.
That is true.
We are recording this because while there are only a few fans here, there are fans of Falkenstein all over the world, because it is the only Victorian game without a strong London focus, for the most part. Or a strong English focus, Eurocentric focus. It is very popular in other countries who see a chance to be represented in Paris or Vienna or Brazil.
Yeah.
So, Castle Falkenstein came out in 1994. People will call it steampunk, and it is not, because there's nothing punk really. There's elements, but there's not much punk about it. It is not specifically about the downtrodden rising up against the oppressors, whether they be corporations or governments of the like. No, Castle Falkenstein is about high adventure in the age of steam and sorcery. It is a world. It is an alternative universe. It is, and when I say this, I mean our world exists. You go one world over to the left, and they are there. It is a world where there is fact. You'll recognize the countries for the most part. You'll recognize the oceans, though they may have slightly different names. You'll recognize most of the historical events, though they may not have played out the way you would think they play out. You will recognize famous people. Queen Victoria is on the throne. Mark Twain is writing books. And the like. Abraham Lincoln is actually still alive as of Six Friends and Sorcery.
Mary Shelley.
Yeah. Mary Shelley? She should be alive. Yeah. She should be alive. She wrote it, and in the case of Mary Shelley, and we'll get to this, the next is fact, fiction, and fantasy. Fiction. If it is a Victorian novel, movie, or TV show, it probably exists somewhere in Castle Falkenstein somewhere. For IP purposes and legal reasons, only the public domain characters are directly referenced. But if you read some of the books, you will catch a sly reference to a certain pair of U.S. secret agents who are fond of gadgets. And if one of their last names rhymes with best, you'll know who I'm talking about. But you will see Sherlock Holmes setting up his consulting detective agency in London a few years earlier than he would have in the books. But we squeeze timelines to make things interesting. You will see Captain Nemo in the Nautilus going through the ocean, waging war on war. you will see giant steam-powered automatons marching through downtown Edo, Tokyo, and attempting to conquer the city. You will see technology more advanced in a steamy sort of way, and that is probably the most steampunk thing about the game, is that BMW and Renault and other Rolls-Royce and other auto companies have steam automotives on the market already. There are airships that are carrying passengers in the air. The Eiffel Tower was built 10 years early. By the way, I had the Eiffel Tower built 10 years early. The Eiffel Tower was built 10 years early because they needed an airship dock in the middle of Paris. And they couldn't have the airships land because there's no fields, so they decided why not build up instead. That's the fiction. As I said, if it's fictional, Frankenstein's out there, and so many of these stories, Huck Finn, Mark, many of these writers, famous writers, are not fiction writers. They are fictionalizing real stories. Mary Shelley is fictionalizing the story of Dr. Victor von Frankenstein, who he is dead, much as the book says, but there are some descendants of his out there that are playing with things man was not meant to know. The monster himself is still out there. In fact, he is. I'll be talking about that in a future section. And then there is fantasy. It is a world where magic exists. Fairies exist. I mentioned there are multiple worlds. In between these dimensions is what's called the fairy veil. It is a realm of crackling energy where anything is possible. And things take strange shapes according to the whims of those who are there. And that is where Mr. Carroll and Miss Little went when they went down the rabbit hole and then to the other side of the looking glass. It is also where the fairies come from. Fairies are not so much folklore as they are these strange aliens made of energy. And because they're made of energy, I liken them to living computer programs. Once they get programmed, they stay programmed and they don't change. So at one point, for example, a fairy came over into a human world and saw a dog and said, okay, that is what I see, I will become that. And that fairy, and every descendant of that fairy thereafter, is a dog. At one point, that dog got beat up by a priest with a shillelagh. And because that dog was focusing on the priest's crucifix, that dog, and all the dogs after him, are afraid of holy symbols. Not because the holy symbol itself has power, though there might be some subconscious power to it, but because they're programmed to be afraid of it. The only exception to that is iron, because they are energy beings. Iron disrupts their ferrous metals disrupts their patterns. Cold iron, which is meteoric iron, disrupts them completely to the point they no longer exist. And when a fairy normally dies, they go back in the fairy veil, they reform, they come back out. It takes some time. But cold iron will remove them entirely, as will large quantities of energy. And as I said before, there are multiple Earths, including ours. They don't like our Earth because almost all our iron is cold iron. They call it, if I remember correctly, the book said that it was the world of hell. It was their worst nightmare. On the other hand, there is one that likes our French fries. And so it is those three things. And there are sorcerers who manipulate the natural magical energies of the world, and they're not D&D fireball sorcerers. They are gentlemen sorcerers of a hermetic, Aleister Crowley, I will do this ritual, and this ritual will gather energy, and then I will release it into the shape of that which I will it to be. And so casting a spell, for the most part, takes time, and so sorcerers are useless on the front lines. A sorcerer is much better off dealing with a pistol than a spell when it comes to the danger. But in the military, sorcerers make good siege engines. They make great back artillery. There are great police detectives who are sorcerers. There's an entire order of them, as a matter of fact. There are healers who are sorcerers. Folk witches, the Illuminati are an order of sorcerers. There is a druidic order of sorcerers. So, and they being learned scholars, gather in societies. And instead of gathering in societies much like the Academy of Sciences, they gather into lodges and orders, and they have clubhouses and rules and ranks and Masonic symbology and the like.
Much of which is all gathered up in the magic zone.
Yes, and I'll go through the supplements too, so you know what they are. And then there are dragons. Dragons are pterodactyls.
Okay.
That is an incorrect name. If you are a dinosaur fan, I apologize.
Pteranodon?
Pteranodons. They are pteranodons who developed intelligence and the ability to do magic, to see and feel magic and manipulate magic as a way of surviving the Great Extinction. Essentially, for them, intelligence, much like for humans, is an evolutionary trait, which Mr. Darwin is starting to examine. Hello.
Dodging the asteroid belt of humanity.
It is pretty tough.
I am.
You probably want to come up on.
And I need to be. You need to be me. And I need to be you.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, just move my computer out of the way.
I had every single distributor and foreign contact in the world who wanted to talk to you, talking to me.
Okay. I'll go back and talk to them.
I'm doing a brief overview of the world.
Okay.
So they developed magic as a way. They evolved intelligence like humans to survive, and they developed magic
I'm talking about
to
dragons.
survive. And they are weaker, theoretically, than your giant red dragon D&D. But when you come across a 12-foot dinosaur who can cast magic and
Well, they're bigger than that,
bend
anyway.
steel, yeah, even a 12-foot on the street, you're not going to mess with them anyway. That doesn't matter. And there are dwarves who are fairies who gave up their immortality and their fairy powers because they love metal, the way that some people love their mother.
Or more so, you know.
And they're the master craftsmen of the world, and many of the technological advances of the world are possible because they can forge, they can make alloys, and they can create and create the small components necessary at a strong enough strength.
Yeah, a dwarf is not really complete, has not really gained acceptance and mastery as an adult in his community until he's done some kind of masterwork. He's done something really, really cool, usually in some kind of artificing or craft or metallurgy, but oftentimes other sciences, although not as much chemistry. But at any rate, the upshot is dwarves make. They are the ultimate in crafters, and that is why they gave up the magics that they inherently have, because if you're going to work with crafting, you need to work with coal to iron, which is inimical to the fairy. While the dwarves are fairy, they have made that choice to be bound.
And they live, they grow old, they die. They are fireproof. Dwarves,
Which really works well
Yeah.
if you spend half your life running around in forges.
yeah, the dwarves, it turns out, a lot of dwarves think human blacksmiths are sissies for wearing aprons and using tongs.
Yeah, what's your problem, man? I just reached inside that, boiling oil and pulled out the ingot that I was forging.
The other great thing about them is there are only male dwarfs, so there is no do female dwarfs have beards. There are only male dwarfs. Dwarves mate with fairy women of various fairy species when they want to have kids. If it's a girl, it's the mother species. If it's a boy, it's a dwarf, but the mother names them. So there is a dwarf named Dandelion, and a dwarf named Sunshine, and a dwarf named Rainbow. And so dwarves are desperate to get their second name because here they are, big, rough, wide, strong, fireproof, making stuff dwarves named Rose Hips.
Fairy mothers are kind of that way. For example, one of the most famous of the dwarves in Castle Falkenstein is Rhyme, Engine Master. And basically, with a name like Rhyme, well, that's kind of cute, but you're not going to get big dates that way. Rhyme is short, grumpy, bad-tempered, but he also discovers and figures how to build magical engines using particular forms of metallurgy and craftsmanship, which allow you to actually shape the web and warp of the world. So Rhyme is a very happy dwarf when he realizes that he can do this because he's no longer Rhyme.
It's also good because he knocked up his clan chief's daughter.
Yeah, that's also true.
Before he
had to have a way to get back home because his clan chief's daughter, got, shall we say, in a way about her.
Yes. So that's Castle Falkenstein in a nutshell. It is, like I said, 1994. It won the Origins Awards, I believe, that year or the year after for Best Game.
And then Six Guns Sorcery won.
And there have been supplements. The original supplements are Falkenstein itself. Then there was Steam Age.
Steam Age, which is about all they insane, both magical and technological engines that are built.
There was.
My personal favorite, Comme il faut. Comme il faut is a guide to being Victorian in a world where there are also dragons. It came about because of a discussion. A good friend of mine named Barry, female, said, we call her Lady Barry. She was my son Cody's nanny. Believe it or not, he had a nanny. And Lady Barry said at one point that being a proper gentleman or gentlelady was not inherent to most Americans. They had no idea how to do it. So she wanted to write a book. And we sat down and put together kind of an ABC of everything you need to know to be a proper Victorian lady and gentleman. How to dress, how to act, what side of the street what side of you should put your mistress on as opposed to your wife. Yeah, all the important things which fit really well when people do cosplay from Castle Falkenstein. People love doing cosplay. I used to cosplay Victorian before I wrote the game. So we would blow people in my shop in Golden Gate Park in full regalia. I had a pretty dashing hussar's uniform, and my girlfriend at the time had the most beautifully lacy dress with enormous frilled hat and parasol. And then we would go throw things at the ducks for a while. But but the thing of it is Comme il faut is one of the best for that. It also has alternate rules to speed things up so that you can do it LARPing-wise as well much faster. Comme il faut is the one book that anyone who's ever played a Victorian game wants. I have people from say, I play 1897, I play Clockwork Dominion, I play Space 1889. I use this book as a reference because no one else has done it. It is a beautiful, beautiful book, and I recommend it. And unless they sold out, it's still at the booth. After that, there's Six Gun and Sword. Book of Sigils. Additional magical orders, additional spells, more information about how magic in the world works. It is, in my opinion, one of the best written of every Castle Falkenstein book. Major Castle Falkenstein has a narrative, in that it is fictional. The rules are interspaced with fiction, so that the rules help you the fiction helps you understand how the rules work in the universe. How they all fit in together. And Mr. Seville's. The story of the main character in that story is one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. In addition, beyond that one, remember there's Oberon's Guide. Yes, Oberon's memoir. The memoir of Oberon a Fairy, which is the complete guide to fairies, where you find out that not only are the bad guys, but the good guys are bad guys, because this is their fifth Earth, as I mentioned. They blew up the first one because they just freaked out. They blew up the second one because they didn't get along with people. Mm-hmm. They went to war with a third one. And they got their butts kicked. And they got their butts kicked because it turns out that sufficiently advanced technology will destroy fairies. They basically came out and said, we're here. And somebody said, and this is the Empire of Man, and we have battle cruisers. Yes. They went to the fourth one, which is our Earth. And as I mentioned before, most of our iron is called iron, and it is a hellish death trap for them. They went to the fifth Earth. And the fifth Earth, they got there very early in history. And the important thing is, one of them came with a history book from one of the other worlds. The third Earth, I believe. And while there are differences, the key timelines of each Earth, up to whatever point in time of development that Earth is at, is roughly the same enough that a clever fairy power can say, you know what? You kind of want to work on these big steel boxes with treaded wheels and cannons fastened on top of them. Because you know what? That's good. And it will help you later on, because you don't know World War I is coming, but I do. I know World War II is coming. And the end result of the big factions of the game is you have the unsilly fairies and the silly fairies. And the silly fairies, by this point in time, are feeling, at least their king, Oberon, is feeling a little guilty about blowing up two Earths. And he wants to protect this one. And he's kind of worried about somebody coming to the third Earth, but I usually don't mention that. And then you have the unsilly, who want humans are horrible, disgusting, and they're not wrong. They've been to war with two different humanities, and it has been terrifying. And they all got the hell scooped out of them by the third Earth and the energy weapons and the starships, because they weren't special then. My name is Vader, and you, Oberon, are my Paul.
So, question. Mm-hmm. That third Earth, spaceships, everything.
Right.
Is that cyberpunk?
No, it is not. Actually, it is based, believe it or not, on the first world I ever wrote, a campaign world called Imperial Star.
Okay.
And Imperial Star was what if the Empire man had magic. It, to a certain extent, was a technologically based magic.
Traveler?
No, kind of beyond traveler.
I was just curious because the Empire of Man is a very traveler phrase.
It's a very traveler fan. I'm a huge travel fan, but it was sort of like the first world I built, and I took bits of everything to get it. I'd say it's actually closer to Paul Anderson's Empire, Police of Technique.
So,
Big Anderson, yeah.
So realizing realizing his opposite number. Oberon is the king of the fairies. He does not have a wife named Titania. It's Auberon. He does not like answering questions about where his wife is or why his name is spelled weird. His opposite number, the adversary, and if that sounds suspiciously biblical, there's a reason. His opposite number, he knew his opposite number would want to raise his people, and possibly some of Oberon's, to just wipe out humanity and claim this Earth as their own before humans developed anything that could harm them. Oberon wanted to protect humanity, and so he essentially tricked tricked the adversary into signing a compact, which stated that humans, silly fairies, and unsilly fairies would not openly war with each other. Years pass, years and years and years. This is fairly. I always wonder if it was on a stone tablet because I'm always imagined this was prehistory.
Are you kidding? There's a picture of that. It's a stone tablet.
Yeah, yes. It is this when I'm saying a signature, I mean someone shipped something into the rock.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they pointed their finger and etched it into the rock. These are very.
The
humans, on the other hand, said, "Okay."
You want me to do what? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Grunt, grunt, grunt. So years later, the unsilly are, and the other thing is because I mentioned that they're sort of like living computer programs. They can't change. They can't imagine. They can't break their word.
Yeah, what's interesting about the fairy, just as one of those weird side notes, at the time we had never run across The Witcher.
Mm-hmm.
And when The Witcher 3 came out and he talked about it, and the books came out and talked about the Wild Hunt, we realized that effectively Sapkowski had done parallel development in that we had a group of fairy that traveled between the multiverses, screwing things up, and we went, that makes sense. So now we've been trying to find a way to make peace with Sapkowski, to work a deal with him and say, hey, can we maybe talk about that in Falkenstein?
Well, the very nice thing you can hint both of that is Jim Butcher's also done it.
It's true.
So it's other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Wild Hunt in Castle Falkenstein works a lot like Jim Butcher's Wild Hunt.
Yeah, it also has many callbacks to a series, Julian May's Many Colored Land, which is a technological-based fairy tale with very, very strange elements of it. Basically, the interesting part about it, because I'm coming late, obviously. Mm-hmm. I apologize, gentlemen.
Introduce yourself.
This is Mike Pondsmith.
Yes.
He is the original creator of Castle
Falkenstein. I'm
Falkenstein.
for not killing your Castle Falkenstein character.
He is also the original creator of Cyberpunk 2020, Mechton of various varieties, Teenagers from Outer Space, and the head of our Talsorian games.
This guy's done a lot of stuff. Does he owe me money?
No. Sorry, not done yet. Former president of the Gamers Manufacturing Association.
Okay,
I
know he owes me money.
As well as an inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Origin Hall of Fame. As the official title Grandmaster?
I don't know that I'd consider to be a Grandmaster. I'm in it. So.
He is in the Hall. He is in the Game Design Hall.
They sent me a plaque and I went, oh, cool. I have an empty wall. This will be perfect.
So he is a fixture of the gaming industry.
I've been around long enough to
who has
trouble.
innovated quite a few genres.
I'm like your old grandpa who shows up, at family reunions. God, he's back again. He's got to tell jokes.
Because the unsilly can't go actively just wipe out humanity and just run them over. They got to be sneaky. They start messing with humanity, picking pawns, giving them technologies from other worlds, giving them ideas, giving them, if you invade this country at this time, it might go well for you. And the opposite number, Oberon, does the exact same thing, but to counter them. Eventually, they get to the point where the adversary realizes, hey, we're coming up on the point where the humans develop the weapons that literally can wipe out their world. It's less than 100 years away. I bet we can speed that up. And so they start they look around and they find a perfect pawn, though he doesn't think he is, and he's aware I think he's aware they think he is.
Oh, you mean
Bismarck?
Bismarck, yes.
Otto von Bismarck, the Chancellor of Prussia, decides that, and in our world, he wanted to unite Germany. And Falkenstein, spurred on by the Unsilly, he wants to unite Europa and then the world as a single Prussian entity.
I want to step in for a moment and explain a couple back things. Okay, so little known strange facts. How Castle Falkenstein came to be was I actually went, after years hearing my parents talk about it, to the castles that Neuschwanstein and Hohenhausen and so forth, that Ludwig the Mad made. And I was sitting there basically eating ice cream just below in one of the courtyards of Neuschwanstein. And before our host had told us there's this big mystery about the death of Ludwig, that he died mysteriously and he was assassinated and all that. And I said, what would happen if King Ludwig had not died? And, what would have changed? So it was originally a what if history concept. I sat down, I started tracking who did what when, who knew who, because the Victorian age is great for everyone knows everybody. And they all hang out. And I started tracking how all the connections worked. And I literally had one of those, stereotypical maps up in the wall, except it was a map of Europe with pins in it. Who hooked up with who and so forth. So it was an exercise in how would you save Ludwig? What would you do? And I realized about halfway through, you would have to have a world where something like magic worked. And if you had a magic world, what would be the fundamentals of that magic world? Who would be it? Who would inhabit it? So in a way, it's a fever dream between a historical what if, a question of how fairy would really work and magic work in the real world. And the magic in Castle Falkenstein looks very much like programming almost, because it is fundamentally designed as a mathematical and realistic magic. And then if you had all that, how many of the people who are real and fictional might exist in this world and cross paths? So for example, in a book that George Alheminger actually wrote for us, we have a situation where Tom Ola, who's our protagonist, has to go up against Fu Manchu. And it's an interesting tale. It is a worldwide, hunting Fu Manchu. Sherlock Holmes floats through it, a number of other people, a dragon floats through it. It gets very, very strange. So that's kind of some background.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you knew that.
I read the novel?
No, I don't know whether you knew some of the background, how we came
No,
about it.
I knew most of that. You've never talked to me.
You were listening.
I've never.
I thought you were asleep.
No, you've never talked to me about the pins on the board. But the story of you at the castle, I knew that, and I didn't know that magic wasn't there from the beginning. That's new.
No, magic was not. I basically had an image of Oberon stepping forward, and instead of the doctor killing or driving Ludwig in the water, Oberon steps in between, knowing that this is the nexus point of this universe, and breaks the doctor's neck and throws him in the river, or in the lake, rather.
Well, and there's some hints that maybe that Ludwig, the Ludwig that's there is maybe our Ludwig.
Yeah, possibly.
You hit it because he is older,
Yes,
or he was hidden away for a while.
He was away for a while. He was away.
Because
I've always wanted to write Ludwig.
Because those natural events were already going to happen.
Yes, and Ludwig II was barking out, and he needed to be cured of that if he was going to be an effective leader.
Yeah, there's always a lot of questions.
To a point.
If you talk to Bavarian, he was not barking mad. He was just.
He was literally sitting under his desk playing toy soldiers while his generals were planning wars. So long story. Anyway, so we had the supplements, and then there was a quiet period because of just life. And Mike, I talked about it in our MechCon seminar, where basically the game market crashed. He had to raise a family, which means he needed a real job.
Now you sound like my mom.
Ouch.
No, seriously, that's not exactly as big a joke as you think. When the game industry was going, I was president, so I knew a lot about it. And one of the problems we had was that we were still a niche market, primarily dominated by D&D and so forth. But also we were not a very intelligent niche market. And in the middle to late 90s, they discovered collectible card games. basically suddenly distribution and other people in a hobby realized that they could take a pack of cards and sell it, and if they were rare cards, they could sell that card for hundreds of times more than a whole case was worth. So it created a land rush. And then, when I started, I was president, I was tracking it, there were 3 card games when I became president. When I left, there were 172.
And as you can imagine, distributors were looking and saying, I can carry this pack of, 1,000 of this pack of cards which sells for $5 each, or 100 of this one book which sells for $20. And there's, all right, and I only have so much space and so much resources to move things.
There was a problem inherent in that, is that, basically a lot of distributors and retailers plunged in that, and then the market crashed. So, I ended up eventually, actually, I was still going on, Talsorian was still going on, and I was offered a job at Microsoft, and they said, wow, you're perfect for video games, you guys do games. So I went up there to raise a kid, and we did not do a lot with Falkenstein, much as I loved it, because frankly, we would not have been able to put it in the market. Nobody was buying any RPGs. It was dead. We really did not see a renaissance until later D&D and Pathfinder, starting in
and then it was almost entirely D&D and Pathfinder.
Yeah, it was this, what you are now in is the second renaissance, which is a lot wider, also because in that market, we had miniatures expand, and we had board games and hybrid board games expand.
Yeah.
So that there's less of a niche market now. I go to a Target, and I can find
some really,
I can find D&D. They have D&D.
The starter set.
Pathfinder in there. Starter sets.
Yeah.
I've seen Starfinder as well.
Yeah. So, because we want to get a question point.
Okay.
Moving forward. One day, I started off writing Pathfinder stuff because that's the easiest place to break into in the game writing market. And I had a midlife crisis and realized I hadn't gamed in 10 years and I'd never accomplished my goal of getting anything published. And I said, okay, Pathfinder is what everyone. There's 1,000 small Pathfinder companies who are always hungry for product. And I proved to be okay at it. I get into a company called Fat Goblin Games, and there's a chat room, and it's run by a man named Rick Hershey, who's an amazing artist. And one day I say to him, we're talking about games we'd love to bring back. And I say to him, I'll tell you what, Rick, you get the Castle Falkenstein license, because that is my all-time favorite narrative game. You get that license, and I will work for free. I didn't expect him to go out and know. And it turns out that Rick Hershey knows someone that knows someone. He said, yeah, okay, I'll send an email to Lisa. A week later, he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this. It's going to take some contract negotiations. You probably want to start figuring out what to be. And I was like, okay, do I still have to work for free?
Put it this way. Lisa, my wife, loves Castle Falkenstein, and partially because I wrote Castle for her. She wanted a game that wasn't hard science fiction, and she wanted the game. The core systems in Castle Falkenstein come from a game I wrote for her called Court Intrigue. So she went, somebody's going to do more Falkenstein. Yes! So she came to me not saying, well, should we do it? But these Fat Goblin guys, if they don't do craft stuff, we're doing it. And we got their stuff, and we went, damn, we're doing it.
I started writing the first book. I decided to start with the bestiary. My initial idea was simple. I would take a Latin bestiary, a typical, regular, old, medieval bestiary. I would throw stats on it. I would put it together. I would have 20, 30 monsters. We'd put it into a nice little book, nice and pretty, and we would put it up. And then I said, oh, well, it's Falkenstein going. Falkenstein needs a fictional narrative running through. And then as I'm writing it, I'm realizing that the animal rules need clarification and expansion. And then I'm thinking, well, if you're talking about animals, we have to talk about hybrid animals, because in Victorian literature, you've got werewolves, you've got Dr. Moreau, you've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who, while not technically a beast man,
You have Tarzan and Apes.
yeah, and I had to account. I had to account for Tarzan and Mobley Man-Child.
Oh yes.
And then I had to account for the weird things. The horse in Black Beauty, who is telling his own story. And is he telling his own story? And
Falkenstein is.
In Falkenstein,
I
he
don't
is.
know how he types. That's what I'm wondering about.
He's actually telling the story to the. He's learned just enough language, but he has fairy blood in him, which is why he's intelligent. And there's that.
It's short.
Yeah, and he's got a ghostwriter who's writing for him, which is the writer of the book in our world. And I had to account for Black Fang. And then I was thinking, I got to account for Dr. Dolittle. And there's all these things that just piled up each other. And by the time I was done, I had this thick, beautiful book. And then of course, finally Rick sets up a phone call with Mike Ponte, and I'm nervous as hell because Mike Ponte is one of my idols, writing-wise. I have a
He's
few,
now been disabused at this.
No, I have a few game writing idols, and Span is one of them. And we talked for about an hour, and you know how you're intelligent guys, you're geeks, and you're used to being kind of if not the smartest guy in the room, one of the smartest guys in the room. That night, I was nowhere near the smartest guy.
We're the smartest guys in the room now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, guys.
No, you probably are. Well, I can't speak for you.
But so I got Curious Creatures. It was called Curious Creatures. I got it out. Long story short, they liked it. Rick Hershey did this beautiful job with the layout. And I like to say it looks like your grandmother's overstuffed Victorian couch. And then we went on, and I was like, well, what else hasn't Falkenstein done? They didn't do a bestiary. They'd never published a standalone adventure. I put out a standalone adventure, and then I started running play tests of that, and I realized there were things I wanted to do with the rules, and I didn't want to make them, the rules must now be this. I wanted to make them, much like the rules in Kung Fa, an optional plugin to make things the way a group wants. You want to do it this way, you can. You don't, you don't. So we got those out, and the end result is, a few years later, we have 3 core books out: Curious Creatures, Firearms and Margarine, and what's called Variations of the Great Game, which are rules options, including options. Did you ever read the dice rules I wrote?
Oh yeah.
Including rules for dice, which is shocking because Castle Falkenstein play with playing cards.
Because gentlemen
and gentle ladies, they don't play with dice. It's vulgar. And this is a game of high adventure. Back in the day, the dice was the game of the lower class.
Oh, okay.
But everyone played
Do not
Whist.
be a culture. Don't play with us.
But the fictional narrative is Professor Moriarty found that the game which exists in that world created by a man from our world who happened to be a game designer, and so he said, of course I'm going to make a game based on my adventures. He found it to be an effective training tool for his thugs, but the problem is his thugs, while they would play poker, didn't understand the subtleties of Whist, which is more what the mechanics are based off. So he figured out they would play dice all the time, and so Moriarty wrote that dastardly cad wrote dice rules. It is a horrible, despicable thing, but it's there in case you like it. In case you are a man of low character, you can use our dice rules.
Yeah.
And then
We don't want to know you.
Yeah. There's a couple of smaller, just digital-only adventures, and if you ever go to our website, you'll see a bunch of things called variations, ability variations, feat variations. Those are all just the variations of the great game that have been done individually, put out as small products, and then compiled into a print book once we had enough. So that is Castle Falkenstein in a long nutshell. Thank you for listening. I'm going to say that Castle Falkenstein is a perfect LARPing game. It just came from a LARP, and it was beautiful. And it's the 7th LARP of its kind to be run at Gen Con by the same man, and is the best gaming experience I've had at a convention ever. And we are looking towards the future, both as Fat Goblin and as our Talsorian.
We right now at Talsorian aren't doing a lot because, as you may have noticed from our booth, our page is really full and our dance card is strapped. However, what we are doing is supporting Fat Goblin because they do beautiful stuff.
And we're happy to have that.
Yes. And we're happy to have that stuff. Believe me, it's beautiful stuff.
And there are 3 products which I am hoping to push out in the next year. Whether they get done, because they're all relatively large ones, is a question. And the thing about being is that now I'm running around doing a lot of stuff for them that slows me down just a little. But the 3 ones is a para source book, because there is no setting, except for 6th Dungeon Sorcery, which is the U.S. source book. The North American source book, I say, because the North America consists of, I want to say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 6-ish nations.
The 20 nations.
Yeah, it turns out expanding west is a lot harder when the natives have magic. And it also turns out that if you put a crazy man on the throne in California, he's an effective ruler. So
Actually,
Emperor
he would have been effective.
Emperor Norton the First is the emperor of the Bear Flag Empire, Bear Flag Republic or Empire, depending on who you're talking to. Texas is still its own nation, and New Orleans is its own nation state because the Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau, while she is not president, has zombified the man who is.
Always good. In addition, one of the things we're looking forward to is years and years ago, I wanted to do what I call chapbooks, which are essentially small guidebooks in a 5x8 format, smaller format, that are essentially kind of like Colmel Folk boiled down, in that one's a gentleman's handbook, one's a lady's handbook, one is a soldier's handbook, military officers effectively, and then what we call the Burke's Peerage, which would be many of the characters that you would actually encounter in the Castle Falkenstein world, with the information not just in terms of stats, but also how you might play them if you were going to show up at a LARP as Samuel Clemens. The idea is that we wanted people to have chapbooks small, portable, so they could literally make them part of live action or anything else just on a daily basis. So they're designed like small diaries. And on top of it, they're also structured so that your character is able to be written into that in the manner of a character notebook. In Castle Falkenstein, you keep a diary, a narration of what you have both started with and each adventure or occurrence within your life. And we built that in, we wanted to kind of carry that forward, so the books are designed in two parts like that.
And then, so there's the Parasaurus book, which I am writing with this wonderfully adroit, who speaks English beautifully, much better than my French type, Parisian, named Julien Perrault. He is a professional writer in his day job for a certain video game company which is based in France, as well as a role player, and more importantly, he is a man that can, when I say, I need to know what's on the street corner, he will walk to that street corner and he will tell me. I will say, I need to know about this obscure character that was never translated into English. Can you tell me about this obscure character? And he will go to the library and he'll look that character up and we'll put it together. We're working on that. It's going to be called Miss Perrow's Guide to Paris. And it is done as a travel book of the period. There will be, the other big project is what I'm calling the Bridgeport All Goods catalog, which I'm still working on, which is, the idea is that P.T. Barnum's daughter came up with the concept of the Sears catalog about, I'm working on it, I'll tell you what happened with it, it's actually 10 years earlier, and so you've got a catalog which, yes, sells the things that the Sears catalog sold, which is everything. The Sears catalog sold at that time sold. You got medicines and dry goods and hardware and house parts. Like when I say house parts, I mean they would ship you a house and you would put it together. And and washing machines and nails. But you've also got clockwork prosthetic arms, which you can hire, which you can order and then have a doctor put on. They've got sorcerers on staff who, if you only send them some of your body fluids, will come up with a cure for anything that ails you. I don't recommend it when sorcerers and Falkenstein have pieces of you. They can do all kinds of things.
Yep.
You've got steam-powered washing machines and race cars and it's that, and it's just going to be an equipment book with these fun, snarky asides. And we're talking along saying, yes, this one, going through the medication. This one's morphine. This one is just alcohol with opium. This one is marijuana, alcohol, and morphine mixed together. And these are dentist tools. I take such good care of my teeth here because I never want to go to the dentist here.
Yes.
That's going to be fun because it's in traditional parlance, the two things South Falkenstein really had was a bestiary and a equipment book. Steam Age was a great vehicle book, but it wasn't so much just what can I buy and how does my money work.
Steam Age also was designed basically to make the travel between points or to create basically friction points for players to say, okay, we're going to stop the giant steam automaton fighting man of Lord Yorinola.
Yeah. And then I mentioned the LARP I was at. As I said, the man that ran it's called Paris in the Spring. You can look for it every year. I almost can guarantee there will be a Paris in the Spring 8. He runs it every year.
There will always be a Paris.
It is beautiful. He has this to an art, a science. I mean, other people have run LARPs, but he keeps doing it over and over and over again. Different one each year, different plot line, different characters, returning characters, plot lines which move from LARP to LARP for the returning players to enjoy. And I want to take his 7 years of adventures and his 7 years of experience and turn it into this is everything you need to go to your convention and run your own LARP. Now that I've got a bestiary, now that there's an adventure I can point to, now that they're the most of the rule options I want out there, and there are a few more that I'll probably work on too, involving sorcery and craftsmanship, that is the 3 things I want. I want the equipment guide, not as an equipment guide, but as a peek as to how their world is different from ours, and nothing says how your world is different from someone else's than what you can buy at the store. It's nice, normal, everyday things. I want the Paris source book because there should be a place where you can walk, where you can go street by street and understand how, like Night City in Cyberpunk, how a city works in that time period. Does it have gas lamps? Is there a magical order of sorcerers who are contracted by the city to make crystals glow at night every night, which is, by the way, what happens in Paris? How do they deal with dragons landing in the middle of the street? What are they dealing with these automotives that are suddenly being sent everywhere? Plus, and the things that you don't understand anymore, like what is an omnibus and why did people ride on top of it? And you know, who are these people that are picking through our trash? And why is there a little hierarchy of people picking through our trash where one person will pick out this thing and one person will pick out rags and one person will pick out food, and they have pecking orders established.
And then another level, which is who are these people going through my trash and how many of them are actually in Falkenstein people? Yes, how many of them are people, and then how common are brownies? Are there brownies in everyone's houses? Or are they a rare occurrence? Are you likely to run into a fairy lord if you go to the average party? There are questions which haven't been answered yet, and I want to answer them there. And that is, and then the LARP thing, because every Castle Falkenstein is the best LARPing game ever, and it needs to be out there. So those are the 3 things. We ran very late. Let's have some, if you want to ask some questions, we'll try to answer before the next group. Go ahead and ask this question until you run us out of here.
Yeah. So please do. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. One thing is the mechanics. You play cards, you have cards. Your abilities, which are skills, have suits based on what kind of, is it physical, is it mental, is it emotional, is it a social activity. If you play the right card, it's worth a lot. If you play the wrong card because it's the wrong suit, it's not worth much at all. You add your cards and your suit and your abilities, score together, and you compare it to a target number, and then you have if you've ever played the Star Wars Fantasy Flight, where you have yes but, no but options for rules, Mike Ponte invented that in Castle Falkenstein. Because there are partial successes and partial failures and high successes, which are critical, but the partial successes and the partial failures are, I don't think any game before you that did it. Yeah. So please, questions for us. We may have gone over everything. I love to talk about Falkenstein.
You actually really did.
I talk about Falkenstein to everyone. It's my baby.
I mean, I'm pretty new to knowing about Falkenstein, so everything that you've just discussed has pretty much been a good.
There are the rule book is available. All the original supplements are available. They are available on the Talsorian website. You can go to their store and you order a print copy. You can go to DriveThruRPG and get a PDF or a print-on-demand copy of them all, as well as that's where DriveThruRPG is where all of the Fat Goblin stuff is. Unfortunately, because there is no, the way DriveThruRPG, they do the systems where you can say, I want to look at everything that's tagged for Pathfinder, or I want to look for everything that's tagged for Starfinder. There is no, I'm gonna ask Mary tomorrow for our tags.
Yeah, I'm going to get tags.
There is no everything, I want to look for everything for Castle Falkenstein. So they're in 2 separate sections of the store, and I apologize for that, but they're all there. They're all relatively inexpensive, and we are happy to have them bought. If you are interested, we're at 1752 in the Convention Hall. Back of the hall in front of Exhibitor Services. I don't know what Falkenstein material we have left, but we had the core rulebook when I left, and we had a couple of the Firearms and Margarine Adventure and a couple of Curious Creatures left. So you're welcome to come and peruse them. And even buy them. Come look at them. Come see how beautiful the books are and what's inside and how, from concept it is, from beginning to end, everything's written in character. Literally everything, rules and all. The layout and the art all pulled together to make this beautiful whole, which I don't take any credit for.
It's an experiment in immersion.
But it is beautiful, and I encourage you to come. I'm running 2 games tomorrow. I don't remember the times, so I'll look it up real quick. So then we'll give this poor gentleman his haul. Tomorrow I'm running a game at 10 and a game at 6 p.m., both in the same room, ICC 105. They're full, but I will not have full tables.
We'll see.
In general, I have not yet had a full table running a game at this convention, ever. People buy tickets, and it blows my mind because they're buying tickets, and then they decide they want to do something else, or they go home early, or they're too tired. So stop by if there's room. You're welcome to join us. I'm glad to teach you the game. And then next year there will be more Falkenstein. Dave Robinsdorf will be here. We'll be here.
So join us then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you so much.
I've just received a missive from the missus.
Yes.
We need to head out.
Okay.